I'd never liked champagne. Something about the way it fizzes. Pretentious and hollow, like fake laughter at a networking event. But I stood there anyway, glass in hand, in a tux that hadn't seen daylight since my wedding. Fitting. The ballroom was opulent, gold leaf trim, crystal chandeliers, tables set with floral arrangements that probably cost more than my first car. I didn't belong here, but that was the point. I was invited, no, summoned, to my ex-wife Melissa's engagement party. Her new man? Logan Pierce, billionaire tech mogul, Instagram's favorite disruptor. The kind of guy who calls Monaco a weekend trip and thinks loyalty is for dogs. I'd shown up out of some twisted curiosity. Or maybe I wanted her to see me, really see me, for the first time in years. But I hadn't planned on this. We were in the middle of the toast. 50 people circled around Melissa as she made her speech, beaming in a silver dress that hugged her like sin. Everyone laughed at her quips, clinked glasses, pretended she was charming. But then, the tone shifted. "And to think," Melissa said, eyes gleaming as they landed on me across the room. "I was married to just a secretary for 6 years. Crazy, right?" The words sliced through the air like a blade dipped in venom. The laughter paused, awkward, confused. She smirked, loving the attention. That was Melissa, always one step away from cruelty when she felt unseen. Someone chuckled nervously. Then Logan, tall, smug, every inch the Silicon Valley god, turned to me with that lazy smile billionaires wear like a badge. "So, man, what do you actually do for a living?" The room waited. Every eye in that ballroom turned to me. My heart didn't race. It slowed, as if savoring the moment. I met Melissa's gaze, calm. She expected me to flinch, to shrink. Instead, I smiled. "2 words," I said, slowly. "Cybersecurity architect." Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. A silence fell so thick it could have buried the dead. Melissa's family froze. Her prim mother clutched her pearls like some Victorian ghost, and her brother, Derek, turned an unhealthy shade of pale. Logan's smirk faltered, his brow furrowed in real confusion now. He understood, or at least he began to. Melissa's face? That was the best part. Her smile twitched, failed, then twisted into something ugly and small. She finally understood why I'd never bragged. Why I'd always kept quiet about my late nights, my international trips, the times I couldn't explain where I'd been or what I was building. She thought I was some glorified office clerk. In reality, I built the systems her precious Logan's companies were terrified of. I saw the cracks in their firewalls. I made the cracks. I was the guy tech billionaires paid not to talk. And Melissa, she'd left me for someone shinier, louder, richer, sure, but dumber. She thought she'd traded up. She had no idea. But this isn't where the story starts. Not really. That moment in the ballroom, the silence, the broken glass, the look on her face. That was the climax. The punchline. The story? It started months earlier. In the quiet disintegration of our marriage. In the late-night texts she thought I didn't see. In the perfume that clung to her like guilt. It started the moment I realized the woman I loved had become a stranger in heels and secrets. And when I say Melissa changed, I don't mean she got a new haircut or took up yoga. I mean she became venom in a smile. She'd lie with a laugh and cheat without blinking. She started treating me like furniture, something useful but dull. Disposable. I let it slide for a while. Told myself she was stressed. Work, family, whatever. But deep down, I knew. You always know. The truth? I had her passwords. Not because I snooped. Because she gave them to me years ago and forgot. And I'm good with data. Real good. I watched the digital trail unfold like a horror film. Names, dates, messages, photos. She wasn't just cheating. She was parading it. Like I didn't matter. Like I'd never mattered. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. See, I don't scream. I don't throw things. I wait. I plan. And when the time came, I'd make sure she'd remember it forever. So yeah, the glass shattered in that fancy-ass ballroom. And everyone went quiet. But what happened next? That's the story. That's where things really got interesting. The first time I knew something was off, Melissa came home wearing red lipstick. Now, that may not sound like much, but Melissa hated red. Said it made her feel too obvious, and she preferred nude tones. Subtle, sophisticated. The kind of woman who curated every detail about herself. She was calculated like that. But that night, Thursday, maybe a month before the engagement party, she walked through the door with crimson lips and eyes that didn't quite meet mine. I was in the kitchen making us both some late pasta. She dropped her bag on the counter, leaned in to kiss my cheek, and mumbled, "Work dinner ran long." She smelled different, too. Not her usual vanilla musk. No, this was sharp, like something foreign. Male. I looked at her, really looked. Her blouse was slightly wrinkled in a way it never was after office hours. Her heels were in her hand, and she had that flushed, jittery energy you don't get from board meetings. So I nodded, didn't ask questions, didn't start a fight. I just watched. Over the next few days, I noticed the little things. She changed the password on her phone, stopped leaving it on the counter like she used to. She began showering as soon as she got home, something she never did before. The woman hated wet hair. Once, while folding laundry, I found a receipt crumpled in her coat pocket. 2 glasses of wine, 1 porterhouse, dessert for 2. Some high-end downtown place we never went together. Dated last Friday. She told me she had a team retreat that day. I could have confronted her right then. Could have called her out. But I didn't. I needed more. I needed the full picture. So I did what I do best. I started digging. Melissa never understood what I actually did for work. She thought I handled email servers or fixed printer errors. But my real job? I designed cyber defense networks for governments, financial institutions, corporations afraid of the next big leak. I'm not just a ghost in the system. I am the system, and I know how to find things people don't want found. Within a few hours, I was inside her messages. Not because I hacked her, no need. She'd left digital crumbs everywhere. Her Apple ID synced to our old MacBook, which was still logged in. Rookie mistake. There they were. The texts. Hundreds of them. Most from someone saved as Laura Jim. Cute. But it wasn't Laura. It was Logan. Her shiny new billionaire. The same Logan she swore was just a business mentor. Yeah, right. They had inside jokes, plans, hotel bookings. Things I wish I could erase from my brain. Photos too. Some blurred, some graphic, all unmistakable. My hands shook. My throat went dry. And yet, I didn't feel rage. Not yet. I felt cold. Focused. Because now it was real. The woman I shared my life with, the one I built a home with, held through surgeries and sick days and celebrations, had thrown it all away for expensive dinners and fake charisma. And she didn't even have the decency to hide it well. She thought I was too busy, too dumb, too safe to ever catch on. She thought wrong. So I waited, played the doting husband a little longer, cooked dinner, listened to her fake stories, let her walk all over my quiet, because I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning precision. I knew exactly how I'd end it, not in a screaming match or divorce court brawl, but in a single moment of silence that would strip her of every lie she'd ever built. And it would start with that party. Funny thing about betrayal, you don't really feel it all at once. Comes in quiet waves. A glance. A tone. A late reply to a text. You try to convince yourself it's nothing, but your gut, it always knows. After I found the messages between Melissa and Logan, something inside me hardened. Not just because she cheated, but because of how easily she did it. Like loyalty was just another piece of jewelry she could take off when it clashed with her outfit. That weekend, we had dinner with her parents. They still liked me, or at least pretended to. Her dad, Arthur, always asked about my little tech job. Still convinced I was some office drone who fixed spreadsheets and made coffee. Melissa liked that. It made her feel superior. She'd laugh in that airy, mocking tone of hers and say things like, "Dylan's basically a glorified intern. But he's sweet, right?" I'd just smile and take another sip of wine. Poker face. Always. I watched her more closely after that. Like I was studying a character in a movie I'd seen too many times. She started coming home later. She spent weekends at wellness retreats, that were really weekend romps at Logan's penthouse. If the calendar invites I found were to be believed, she was slipping. Not just morally, but strategically. You see, cheating is a lot like espionage. It's not just about who you're with, it's about how well you cover your tracks. And Melissa? She thought changing her iPhone passcode was enough. She didn't realize I'd already cloned her entire device onto a secure backup months ago, something I did during routine security maintenance at her request. That's the problem with liars. They assume silence means ignorance. But I wasn't just being quiet. I was collecting. Every time she lied, I logged it. Every time she left for a fake meeting or girls' night that ended with lingerie photos in hotel rooms, I timestamped it. I had a folder so airtight it would make courtroom prosecutors weep with envy. Still, I hadn't decided what to do yet. Part of me wanted to expose her in some dramatic, flaming finale. The other part? It wanted to disappear. Let her rot in the illusion of her perfect life, never knowing when the fallout would hit. But fate made the choice for me. One night, we were getting ready for some gala, a networking event for people with more money than morals. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her earrings, smiling at herself like a movie star. Out of nowhere, she said, "When Logan proposes, it'll be on a yacht in Greece. Not like your proposal over pasta." God, I was such a child back then. She laughed. That sharp, empty laugh of someone who thinks cruelty is clever. I didn't say a word, just watched her in the mirror. She didn't even look at me, and that was it. That was the moment the decision crystallized. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I wasn't going to confront her with evidence or drag us through a messy breakup. I was going to let her go, but on my terms. I began preparing for the party the way a sniper prepares for a hit. Quietly, patiently, with no emotion left in the trigger finger. Let her flaunt her new billionaire. Let her tell her little jokes about her secretary ex. Let her stand in front of 50 people and smirk like she won the game. Because when I spoke, I'd only need 2 words to end it all. And when I did, she'd finally learn the difference between being underestimated and being forgotten. The day of the engagement party arrived like a storm I could see coming from miles away, but didn't bother to dodge. I ironed my shirt slowly that morning, hands steady, knowing this would be the last time I ever let Melissa take center stage in my life. Funny how calm I was. I should have been bitter, angry, maybe even heartbroken. But I wasn't. I was done. And when a man is truly done, when the last flicker of emotion has burned out, you can't hurt him anymore. You can only make him laugh. Melissa texted me hours before the party, like it was just some casual social event and not the stage for her final performance. "Melissa, party starts at 7. Don't be late, Dylan. Be useful for once and wear the navy suit. It's the least embarrassing." Useful. Embarrassing. She didn't even realize she was laying out the red carpet for her own reckoning. I showed up 10 minutes early. The venue was unreal. Some historic hotel ballroom with gold trim, marble floors, and chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a European opera house. It reeked of money but not class. Like Melissa herself, it was all about the appearance. I scanned the room. Her new circle of friends buzzed with artificial laughter and expensive perfume. Fake people in real diamonds. Logan stood by the bar, surrounded by sycophants. He wore that slick blue tux that screamed, "Wealth with no effort." I admit he looked the part, but I knew what he really was. A man who inherited confidence and money but had built nothing with his own hands. And then I saw her, Melissa. She glided into the room like a starlet on a red carpet, her silver dress hugging her like a secret. Lips red, hair perfect, posture straight. She was a walking headline, divorced woman reborn. She saw me and smirked, like she'd won something. I kept my expression blank. No anger, no admiration, just a man waiting for the curtain to drop. She made her rounds, clinking glasses, greeting family members, feeding everyone little crumbs of affection. But her eyes kept finding me. I could see it bothered her that I wasn't playing the part. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't bitter. I was just there. Dinner was served, the speeches began, and I could feel the energy shifting. Melissa took the mic, Logan's hand on her back like a prop. She raised her glass. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight to celebrate a real future. One built on trust, success, and elevation, she said, grinning. To think, I spent 6 years married to just a secretary. There it was, the jab, the slap she thought would land quiet and cruel. The room chuckled, awkwardly. Some people didn't laugh at all. They glanced at me, unsure how I'd respond. Logan, clueless, cocky, chimed in, grinning. So, Dylan, what do you actually do now? He said it like it was a joke, like I was still the guy Melissa had painted for everyone. A footnote, a failure. I stood up. The room fell dead silent. All eyes on me. I looked at Melissa, then at Logan, and I said it. Just 2 words. Cybersecurity architect. You could hear the air suck out of the room. Her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered at her feet. Her mother gasped. Her father stared like I just revealed I worked for the CIA. Logan's grin twisted into confusion, then discomfort. People began whispering. Some looked at me like I was suddenly radioactive. Others like I was a ghost that had returned with secrets. And Melissa? She looked like a woman standing in the middle of a fire she couldn't control anymore. For the first time in years, she wasn't the smartest person in the room. She was just the loudest. The sound of the champagne glass hitting the floor echoed louder than her voice ever had. The moment my 2 words dropped, it was like the music, the chatter, the champagne fizz. Everything got sucked out of the room. Melissa didn't move. Not right away. She stood there frozen, eyes wide, lips slightly parted like she'd forgotten how to breathe. That perfect red lipstick? It cracked at the corner like her little fantasy. Logan was still trying to understand. Cybersecurity architect? He repeated, like the phrase physically hurt to say. As in what, exactly? I looked him dead in the eye. I design security frameworks for military contractors, financial institutions, Fortune 100 companies. The kind of systems your companies pay millions to protect, after I show them exactly where they're weak. More silence. Then murmurs. One of Logan's VCs, some guy in a linen blazer and sockless loafers, looked at me like he'd just realized his Ferrari had a leaky engine. I saw it click in real time. I wasn't Melissa's loser ex. I was the guy who could dismantle his entire empire with a keyboard. Melissa opened her mouth to speak, but the sound that came out was thin, weak. Nothing like the woman who used to bark orders at me from across our kitchen about how to season pasta or how real men drive German cars. Why didn't you ever say anything? She asked, almost whispering. That made me laugh. I hadn't meant to, but it slipped out. A dry, amused sound. Not angry, just tired. Because I don't need to perform for attention, Melissa. I don't need a crowd. She flushed, redder than her lipstick. I could see the fire trying to reignite in her eyes, but it was too late. The damage had been done, and this time she was the one exposed. Logan stepped in like he thought he was helping. Hey, look, man. If this was about money, I cut him off. It's not about money. It's about respect. I turned to the room. Melissa used to laugh at me for working quietly. She thought being loud was the same as being important. She couldn't see past image, so she traded character for clout. You could hear her inhale sharply behind me, but I didn't stop. And I let her. For years, I let her believe I was small. But the truth is, I built things she'll never understand. I protect people she'll never meet. And while she was busy playing queen in a castle of glass, I was building fortresses for people who know what real trust looks like. Logan cleared his throat, but he had no clever comeback. Not this time. Melissa, in full panic mode now, tried to smile. Tried to salvage the night. Well, I guess some people hold on to old bitterness longer than their wedding vows, she said, forcing a laugh. It's just sad. Sad. That word clanged in my chest for a second, but only for a second. No, Melissa, I said calmly. What's sad is that you had someone who loved you quietly, deeply, fully, and you mocked that, because it wasn't shiny enough for your ego. Then I turned away. I didn't wait for applause. I didn't need validation. I didn't even care what the crowd thought. I'd said what needed to be said for myself, not for them. As I reached the door, someone muttered under their breath, "Damn, that was enough." I walked out into the warm night, free for the first time in years. No ring, no lies, no pretending, just me, Dylan Cooper. Not a secretary, not a fool, not her husband anymore. The moment I stepped out into the night air, I felt something lift off my chest. Not just relief, not victory, something deeper, freedom. The city buzzed around me like it always had. Cars passing, lights blinking, life moving forward. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't dragging her shadow behind me. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I found a quiet bar near the Riverwalk, the kind of place where no one asked questions and the bartender knew how to pour whiskey without overthinking it. I sat at the far end of the counter, loosened my tie, and just existed. The truth is, I hadn't really let myself feel anything in months. I'd been too focused, too calculated, holding everything in like a dam with a hairline crack. But sitting there, staring into that glass, it hit me. The woman I once planned forever with had turned into a stranger. Not suddenly, gradually, lie by lie, step by step, until there was nothing left of the girl I married. Just a polished version, sculpted for people who clapped at fake smiles and talked about private islands like they were summer cabins. I remember the early days with Melissa, back when her smile was real, back when she used to touch my face like I was something rare. We had ramen in our pajamas on Friday nights. We laughed about stupid movies. She once told me she loved that I was quiet. Like an anchor, she said. But somewhere along the way, that anchor became an annoyance, a weight, and instead of seeing stability, she saw stillness. Instead of appreciating peace, she chased fireworks. She started talking about being seen, about growing and leveling up. I didn't realize back then that those were just rehearsed lines from her new circle of influencers and soul coaches. A cover for discontent she refused to admit was her own fault. I tried to meet her halfway. I worked harder, bought a new car, took her on trips. But it was never enough, because I wasn't flashy enough to perform for her fantasy life. She needed someone like Logan, a man with loud toys, fast money, and a hollow laugh that echoed in marble hallways. She wanted wealth, yes, but more than that, she wanted applause. And I was background noise. The divorce wasn't even explosive. That was the strangest part. When I finally filed the papers, she didn't cry, didn't beg. She signed them in silence, with a smirk like she was trading in a used car for a new lease. "Don't take it personally, Dylan," she'd said. "We just want different things. Yeah. Like integrity, loyalty, basic decency." But even then, I kept it civil. I gave her the furniture, the apartment. I even let her keep the stupid espresso machine I bought her for her birthday, the one she claimed meant I really saw her. The truth is, I'd let go long before that signature hit the page. And tonight, in that ballroom, she finally knew it. She'd lost the one person who would have stayed through everything. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. And now she had a rich man, an audience, a stage, but no substance behind it. As I finished my drink, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not triumph. Not gloating. Just quiet, honest peace. Melissa's world was built on illusion. Mine? It was finally built on truth. 2 weeks passed after the party. Long enough for the whispers to fade, but not long enough for her ego to recover. I didn't hear from Melissa directly. I didn't expect to. That wasn't her style. She never reached out when the lights were off. Only when there was an audience. But I did hear from her mother. It was a Tuesday morning. I was sipping coffee in my apartment, the new one. Smaller but quiet. No sharp heels echoing across tile floors. No passive-aggressive sighs about the laundry. Just silence. The kind that feels earned. My phone buzzed. Arthur's wife. Why I never bothered to save her number properly, I still don't know. "Dylan, I know things ended badly, but Melissa isn't herself. Could we talk?" I stared at the screen for a moment. Wasn't herself? No, that was her. She just wasn't pretending anymore. Out of pure curiosity, or maybe a little leftover kindness, I agreed to meet. We picked a cafe far from the city's pretentious spots. Neutral ground. Her mother arrived wearing oversized sunglasses and a trench coat, like she was avoiding paparazzi. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting across from me. "Sure," I replied. "You said it was important." She looked uncomfortable, like she was about to confess to a priest. "She's not doing well." After the party, Logan pulled out of the engagement. Said she wasn't honest with him. Said she embarrassed him. I sipped my coffee. And she's spiraling, Dylan. You were the stable one. You grounded her. I know she never appreciated that. I raised an eyebrow. This was the same woman who used to look at me like I was the help. "She's not used to being without power," she added. "Logan was her rebound, not her future. You were." I didn't say anything for a long moment. Finally, I said, "She made her choice. She just didn't think she'd have to live with it." Her mother flinched, but didn't argue. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't angry, just honest. Melissa didn't lose Logan because of what I said at that party. She lost him because he saw what I once saw. Behind the gloss and curated charm, there was nothing real. And here's the thing about people like Logan. They don't stick around when the illusion breaks. But I had. For years. Through her meltdowns, her silent treatments, her backhanded compliments. I stayed. Not because I was weak, but because I believed people could change. That love meant patience. Now, I didn't believe that anymore. Some people aren't looking for love. They're looking for a mirror. Her mother reached across the table, touched my hand like she was touching a hot stove. "I just thought you should know. For closure." Closure? Closure came the moment I walked out of that ballroom with my spine intact. She left shortly after. I watched her go, then sat in that cafe for a while longer, thinking. Not about Melissa, about me, who I'd become. The silence I now lived in wasn't empty. It wasn't bitter. It was clean. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about peace. And maybe, just maybe, about making room for something better. Something honest. It's strange, really, how betrayal can be the beginning of becoming. You think it'll destroy you, but sometimes it burns down the version of yourself that needed to die anyway. I wasn't the same man who used to tiptoe around Melissa's moods, carefully choosing my words so I didn't trigger another icy silence or sarcastic jab. That man? He thought love meant endurance. He thought staying quiet made him strong. But silence without boundaries is just slow bleeding. Now, things were different. I had my own place. Clean lines, nothing fancy. No photos of smiling people pretending everything was okay. Just a desk, a bed, and peace. I spent my evenings how I wanted. Reading, coding, occasionally taking freelance gigs for companies too paranoid to trust their own security teams. Paid well. And more than that, it reminded me of what I was good at. I hadn't just been surviving. I'd been rebuilding. And somewhere in that process, the anger faded. I didn't wish Melissa harm. That would have been too easy. Too bitter. No, what I felt was colder than anger. Indifference. She called me once. Blocked number. Probably forgot I'd know it was her from the call metadata alone. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I didn't want an apology. Didn't need closure. I already had it the moment she looked me in the eyes and saw someone she didn't understand anymore. Her world, built on clout, curated aesthetics, empty promises. It was still spinning. But it didn't intersect with mine anymore. I ran into her brother Derek a few weeks later. Grocery store. Total accident. He looked uncomfortable, like seeing me meant he'd have to acknowledge the family's silence after the divorce. "You look good, man," he said awkwardly. "Heard you moved on. That's cool." I nodded. "Hope Melissa's doing all right." He shrugged. "She's Melissa." That said everything. I left the store with a half smile. That was the last thread, and it had finally snapped. The part that surprised me the most, though, was how open the road ahead looked. For the first time in years, my future didn't feel like a script I hadn't written. I wasn't playing a role anymore. I wasn't Melissa's husband. I wasn't just a secretary. I wasn't small. I wasn't silent. I was Dylan, a man who had lost almost everything, and somehow gained more than he'd ever expected. It's funny how people measure success. For Melissa, it was designer handbags, shiny rings, and applause. For me, it was sitting on my balcony at 11 p.m. with a cup of coffee and not having to explain where I was or why I was still awake. It was knowing that when I built something, it lasted. Not just in code, in character. And maybe someday someone else will sit across from me. Someone who doesn't need fireworks or filters. Someone who understands that real love doesn't scream. It stands. Quiet, steady, present. But for now, I'm okay alone. Better than okay. Because I finally know who I am without her. And that's worth more than any ring, any party, any shallow validation. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone going through what I did, it's this: let them underestimate you. Let them laugh. Let them lie. And when the moment comes, speak your truth. Clearly, simply. 2 words are all it takes. And if they're the right 2, they'll echo longer than anything she ever said.